Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu suppressed the unease in his heart and shifted his gaze from Granny Sai's body. He then saw Butcher with his knife standing on a heavenly star. His body was tall and sturdy. The two knives were side by side, but he didn't move as well. Qin Mu then saw Hermit Qin Yu. He was wielding a horsetail whisk, which at that moment was placed next to his elbow. He sat in a lotus position, and the thing upon which he was sitting was also a star. Next, Qin Mu saw Mute standing on a fire star of great overarching heavenly stars. Qin Mu's heart shook violently, and he nearly vomited blood. He shifted his gaze with difficulty and saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The man sat on Earthquake Cauldron below, which was one of the stars of great overarching heavenly stars. Qin Mu shifted his gaze from his body and saw Rat Immortal, Fox Immortal, and the other people. Cripple had brought Apothecary, who was still bleeding, to sit on one of the stars as well. Blind had his head lowered while leaning on his bamboo cane. There was also a star under his feet. Old Ma was like a Buddha, Deaf was holding onto a brush, Queen Yi held her wing knife, and King Kuan still possessed the horn on his head. They were also within great overarching heavenly stars that had burst forth from Granny Sai's palm. Each and every one of them was standing on a star. Where's Sister Jing? Why is she not here? Qin Mu hurriedly looked around, trying to find traces of Yang Jingjing. Even if it was Sun's ship, it couldn't block the gods of high heavens, right? Suddenly, a beam of bright light swept past them, and Qin Mu saw a sun. It was half black, so only when it turned over were they basked in its bright rays. Sun's ship was extremely huge, so even if its body was blocked by a mountain peak, the sunlight could still be faintly seen coming from the other side. Yet Sun's ship showed no movement. Its aura could not be felt. Qin Mu's heart suddenly sank. Hu Linger at that moment said, "Young master, I don't see Yellow Immortal and Tuxing Feng." Qin Mu composed himself and continued to look around with the two divine rays shooting out from his eyes. He saw a god standing behind Granny Sai with his fingers put together like a sword, pointing at the back of her head. Yet that god was frozen in place and couldn't move. Next, Qin Mu saw Flower Sovereign of High Heavens. She was a woman with flowers blooming under her feet, filling the sky as though they had grown from the sky. She stood upside down on one of the flowers as though she was walking on the sky to attack great overarching heavenly star force field. Yet she also was frozen, not moving at all. Qin Mu then saw a third god which was in the sky above Sun's ship. He was stretching his claws out as though to attack someone on the ship. Yet he was also frozen in the air. Qin Mu looked farther back and saw other gods of high heavens. They were in different poses, like they had been caught in the middle of battle. Not one god was still able to move. Are they dead? Qin Mu wanted to stabilize his mind, but he kept finding it hard to do so. This sight was simply too peculiar. Everyone was standing motionless as though time had stopped. But if the time had truly stopped, how were Qin Mu and the rest not affected? Your Majesty, they should still be alive, the Divine Flood Dragon King suddenly said. I can still feel their aura. Their breaths are long and drawn out. Only a few of them don't have any breath left. What's weird is that their primordial spirits are not in their bodies. It's as if they had been pulled out from within them. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. Primordial spirits were pulled out of their bodies. The Divine Flood Dragon King nodded and said, there are no primordial spirits in these bodies. I can guess from Granny Sai and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's positions that it should be some sort of primordial spirit formation. When their divine art suddenly burst forth, everyone's primordial spirits were forcefully dragged out of their bodies. If I were to continue with this guess, their injuries had to have been so severe that they could only decide to use primordial spirits to fight. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief, and his heart relaxed a little. They aren't dead, they are just fighting with their primordial spirits. Divine Flood Dragon King, you are more knowledgeable in this, do you know where their primordial spirits go? The speed of a primordial spirit is very fast, it can travel tens of thousands of miles in a flash, moving through the boundless void. So their primordial spirits shouldn't be here. Their destination is not something I could know. Qin Mu was stumped for words. The next moment, though, he asked in an astringent voice, which of them have no more breath left? The divine flood dragon king pointed at apothecary, then cripple, deaf, King Kuan, and rat immortal. Qin Mu's heart became heavier and heavier. There are also some gods of high heavens who have no more breath left. Their primordial spirits must have lost the battle, the divine flood dragon king said in a low voice. Qin Mu's face darkened, and he rose to reach Sun's ship. He saw that everyone on it was frozen. From that, it was obvious that when Granny Sai and the rest have executed the primordial spirit formation, the primordial spirits of everyone in the surroundings were brought away, no matter if there were mortals or gods. Young Master, Ulinga saw Qin Mu's face, and her heart grew uneasy. Young Master, they won't die. Qin Mu closed his eyes before opening them up again with determination. Divine Flood Dragon King, come and lend me your power. I want to use the magic power of God to execute Soul Guide. As long as their souls aren't extinguished, I'll be able to summon them back. The Divine Flood Dragon King hesitated for a moment before saying, Young Master, your corporeal body might not be able to handle my magic power. I'm different from these flood dragons, I'm a god and they aren't. You can withstand with your divine bridge, divine treasure, the borrowing of their power, but if you borrow my magic power, you will only burst your divine bridge, divine treasure, since the bridge itself is broken. I tell you to lend me, so just lend me. Qin Mu said firmly. The Divine Flood Dragon King was helpless and could only place the corpses of Old Dao Master, Old Rulai, and the rest down. Your Majesty, I will transform into a huge dragon which will lie on your backbone to support your corporeal body so it won't be blown into pieces. However, I can't protect the divine treasures. If your Majesty can't endure it, just give me the word and I will take back my magic power. Do it. The form of the Divine Flood Dragon King rapidly shrunk and transformed into a 3 yards long sapphire blue flood dragon which stuck itself to Qin Mu's back. It then gradually faded out, transforming into a sapphire blue marking of a flood dragon on Qin Mu's back. It was like a tattoo. Qin Mu executed secrets of dragon control and instantly borrowed the magic power of the flood dragons. Explosions could be heard coming from his body as his 7 stars divine treasure, celestial being divine treasure, life and death divine treasure, and divine bridge divine treasures were all awakened. The magic power of the flood dragons was already extremely dense and filled his divine bridge to the brim. Next, he directed the magic power of the divine flood dragon king, and instantly, his vigorous magic power broke through divine bridge divine treasure and went straight to celestial heavens. Qin Mu's primordial spirit was struck by all that magic power and crossed over to the other shore, past the divine bridge. He was lifted by the violent magic power toward the celestial palaces. However, the magic power of the divine flood dragon king wasn't enough to bring him all the way to celestial heavens. He was forced to stop at the southern heavenly gates, which was considered just having entered the realm. Your Majesty's divine bridge is not broken. The divine flood dragon king was ineffably shocked, but at that moment, Qin Mu roused his incomparably vigorous magic power and cryptic devil language came out from his mouth as he executed Soul Guide. It was the spell of 9 spectres sect and no remarkable divine art in Eternal Peace Empire, but it was something which had once caused turmoil in the land. When Qin Mu had first entered Imperial College to learn techniques and divine arts, he didn't choose any with astonishing power. Instead, he found Soul Guide and Ghost Transferring God's Dispatching Runes Command as he felt that these 2 spells were exotic and able to unleash power beyond one's imagination. Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes Command was a spell left behind in Eternal Peace Empire by Juqian Devil King who had schemed to use it to seize land for his people's new home. The origin of Soul Guide should not rest with 9 Spectres sect either. It was not something they could have founded. This spell seemed to have a connection with Yudu, and Qin Mu even suspected at one point that it was probably from there. It was a spell which belonged to the soul category of Yudu. It was just that his knowledge of Yudu language was still lacking and he didn't know much about the mysterious Yudu world, so he couldn't develop the spell to its extreme. Even so, His attainments in Soul Guide had already far surpassed what Nine Spectres sect had shown back then. Gate of Heaven influence, open! Qin Mu shouted out, and a terrifying door suddenly opened up behind him. His magic power was violent, and the Gate of Heaven influence also became abnormally huge and tall. The two doors of the several hundred yards gate opened up, and Yudu world instantly appeared in the darkness. Devil Chi rolled out and invaded the darkness of great ruins, giving off an aura that made the hearts of ghost gods pound. Nine Spectres sect's divine arts practitioners couldn't cultivate Gate of Heaven influence. They could only borrow Soul Guide to form gates that connected to Yudu's gate, but Qin Mu could. The Gate of Heaven influence that he had cultivated was authentic. After the gate opened up, the power of the spell of Soul Guide instantly burst forth, and runes emanating with faint glow rushed into Yudu. They lit up a path in the darkness which looked like a floating bridge stretching non-stop into the depths. After a moment, the mountain rock suddenly overturned as skeletons tunneled out from underground, dancing and gesticulating in joy. In Eternal Peace Empire and Great Ruins, the land bulged up continuously. All kinds of corpses and skeletons flooded out from the ground. Their mouths opened and closed, but no sounds came out. Qin Mu frowned. More and more souls were being guided over by him out of Yudu. But even though they belonged to various life forms which had died nearby, he didn't manage to call over the souls of Apothecary, Cripple, and the rest. They are not in Yudu? No matter who took you guys away, I will find you. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and gave an angry roar. Gate of Heaven influence suddenly expanded and the power of Soul Guide increased drastically. Grandpa Apothecary, bring your soul back here. Fengju is right in front. In the living realm of the dead, a bird-headed mutant was leading a group of people. He said to Apothecary, Cripple, and Deaf, your old friend is waiting for you on the Bridge of Helplessness. Old friend? Apothecary was at a loss. Which old friend? That bird-headed god smiled. You will know when you get there. When they came to the Bridge of Helplessness, Apothecary, Cripple, and the rest were stunned when they saw an able-bodied village chief standing at the center of the bridge. Everyone, we meet again on the Bridge of Helplessness, you guys are still. Before he could finish his sentence, black fog churned under the Bridge of Helplessness and a huge whirlpool formed up. From it, an angry roar rang out, Grandpa Apothecary, bring your soul back here. Apothecary, Cripple, and the rest on the bridge suddenly felt their world start spinning as they got dragged into the whirlpool by the bizarre power. They fell into the depths without any ability to resist. An imposing shout of anger came from Fengju. Which demon dares to create a ruckus in my Fengju? King Yama's body gradually rose, and he looked down into the whirlpool in the depths of which he saw Qin Mu's face. King Yama was slightly stunned. In Fengju City, gods and devils flew over to surround King Yama and look down at the bridge. When they saw the whirlpool, their faces changed drastically. They were about to make a move, but King Yama raised his hand and said solemnly, no need for that, let him go. The gods and devils of Fengju City were all rather puzzled. The divine art below the bridge is of Yudu. That place has come to our Fengju to steal our people, so how can we tolerate them? Another god then added, if Yudu continues to create a ruckus, we will be unable to keep our Fengju for long. King Yama, let's attack Yudu. King Yama shook his head. When he spoke, his voice was slightly strange. The person who used the divine art of Yudu is neither a god nor devil of Yudu, but a guest from Carefree Village. I've seen this face before, it's very similar to that person. There's no need to delve into this. Under the cape of darkness, his gaze was like candlelight, burning with a ghostly glow. A person of Carefree Village has shown up. I was waiting for the old swallow of the previous dynasty and old dreams to return to rebuild its nest, but what can I do when a new swallow comes instead of the old one? It's time for the return of swallows that I've met before. Old or new, it's hard to distinguish, village chief said. King Yama lowered his head to look at him. His cape fluttered in the sky above Fengju City, and his figure left into the distance. Village chief looked down the bridge and sighed. I thought I was going to have a reunion with Apothecary and the rest, but Qin Mu went and summoned them back. I wonder if their corporeal bodies are dead or not. If they are, we will still have to reunite in Fengdu. Master, what's the river below the Bridge of Helplessness? Legends say that it originates in Yudu. We call it the River of Forgetfulness. The human emperor before his master came to his side and looked down the river. There are many stories here and it'd be hard to tell you all of them in a short while. There are plenty of monsters in the river. They come from Yudu and are extremely terrifying. The strong practitioner who had executed the divine art of Yudu to snatch the people had found his way here through the River of Forgetfulness. You should be very familiar with that person, right? He looked at village chief's face, and his gaze flickered. You were the closest, but when you heard his voice, you didn't make a move to stop him. Village chief nodded, and with a hint of pride in his voice, he said, "He's my disciple, the current human emperor." How's that, old bastard? The disciple I've chosen is better than the disciple you chose, right? Bah! Isn't the disciple I've chosen you, dumbass? Old bastard, die! In great overarching heavenly stars force field, apothecary, cripple, King Kuan, and the rest suddenly opened their eyes. Crap, my corporeal body has already died. I can't protect my primordial spirit anymore. Death suddenly said. King Kuan and Rat Immortal also woke up, and their expressions changed drastically. Their primordial spirits had left their corporeal bodies for too long, and as a result, their bodies had started to decay. The reason why the Divine Flood Dragon King had noticed they had no breath was because of the death of their corporeal bodies. Mua, how long can you hold on for? Apothecary rose in a hurry and took out all kinds of herbs and silver needles. If you can hold on for a bit longer, I can extend our lives and revive our corporeal bodies, he said with nervousness on his face. Qin Mu stood in front of Gate of Heaven Influence, continuing to borrow the power of the Flood Dragons and the Divine Flood Dragon King to maintain Soul Guide. Grandpa Apothecary, don't worry, I can hold on for several days and nights. No need for that long. Apothecary took out a beehive and said, I shall first use soul termites to link our corporeal bodies and primordial spirits before using poison to nourish the former. The poison will cut off the connection between our primordial spirit and Fengdu and Yudu. I will then raise life substitution insects to die in our place. He tossed the beehive up, and it began to float as it grew bigger rapidly. Inside it, there were insect eggs and strange seeds of all sizes. The insects in the milky white eggs were all different from one another. Apothecary rapidly cultivated poison and refined medicine. He tapped on everyone's bodies with all kinds of unpredictable hand techniques, and soon the sound of hearts beating came from their bodies. Apothecary quickly used silver needles to stab them all over their bodies. Death looked at the insect egg nervously, but the next moment, his mouth was pinched open by Apothecary to stuff in the egg. Death's face turned ashen. Apothecary quickly dug up holes and planted a few seeds. After a moment, they germinated and huge buds grew out. The flowers swirled, and their petals spread outwards. Everyone, enter the flowers. Everyone did as told, and Cripple asked, Doctor of the martial world, what's this flower of yours? It's fleshy to the touch. Apothecary had a nervous expression. They are not flowers, but life substitution insects. Don't move, let them swallow you guys. Life substitution insects. Everyone was slightly stunned. The huge flowers then pulled back and their petals closed up, wrapping everyone tightly inside. Those flowers were indeed not flowers, but a kind of bizarre insect. After swallowing everyone, they started to distort and gradually grew a head, 4 limbs, and a body. Their appearances were identical to the people they had swallowed. Qin Mu was stunned. He recognized King Kuan, Apothecary, and the rest, and could find no fault. However, what was weird was that the insects actually had everyone's auras. They even imitated their souls and primordial spirits with an uncanny resemblance, so that others couldn't see any difference. What was even weirder was that Apothecary and the rest rapidly aged and grew white hair in an instant. In the blink of an eye, they aged from their middle years to their late years, before aging from their late years to their end. After a moment, Apothecary and the rest had exhausted their lifespans. They collapsed onto the ground without any breath left, covering the ground with corpses. Qin Mu dispersed soul guide, and peculiar auras surged from places unknown. From the depths of space, darkness surged out and lamps lighted up in the darkness as paper boats floated over. Elders stood up on them and raised their lamps at the corpses of Apothecary and the rest. Their souls floated out without any obvious awareness at all. They walked onto the paper boats with stupefied expressions, following the light of the elders' lamps. The paper boats turned away, and the messengers of death hung their lamps back onto the boats. They then sailed into darkness, and the bizarre auras vanished. That's good, the messengers of death have been tricked. Apothecary's voice came from underground, and the earth suddenly bulged as fleshy insect sacs popped out. Apothecary, Cripple, and the rest made their way, covered in sticky liquid. Apothecary pulled out the needles from everyone who was still very weak. Their primordial spirits were still slightly unstable. Apothecary checked and said, half of the soul termite is in the soul and the other half is in the corporeal body. I first need to adjust your corporeal bodies, allowing them to recover, before I can fully revive you guys. But I've already exhausted all the spirit herbs I had on me. There's a pond of pure yang on Sun ship which can recover life force rapidly, Qin Mu immediately said. That would be a great help. Apothecary let out a sigh of relief and said, let's go soak in that pond of pure yang and recuperate our bodies. Those life substitution insects won't be able to trick the messengers of death for long. Everyone hurried over to Sun ship, and since Qin Mu was familiar with the place, he quickly brought them to the pond of pure yang. Everyone went into it, and their corporeal bodies gradually recovered. However, the water in the pool also gradually lessened. When Qin Mu saw that everyone was no longer in danger, he asked everyone, where had your primordial spirits went? Rat Immortal let out a sigh of relief and said, during the battle, Sun Guardian brought her ship to assist us, but the gods of high heavens were truly powerful. They had all kinds of divine arts and god treasures with immense power. Big sister and second brother died in battle one after another. Sun Guardian was also forced back, which left everyone on the brink of crisis. Imperial Preceptor activated Earthquake Cauldron, having chosen to bring everyone down together. He injured all the gods with the tremors, but something weird happened. Qin Mu looked at him with puzzlement, then suddenly came to realization. He cried out, Earthquake Cauldron pierced the barrier between another world and eternal peace. No, Cripple shook his head and said, the power of Earthquake Cauldron was absorbed by God-broken mountain range. Qin Mu was stunned. When I saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, that scoundrel, taking out Earthquake Cauldron, I immediately knew something was wrong, so I brought Apothecary to run for our lives. That's why we were slightly farther away. Death, you were much closer, so you tell him. Death plucked out his 2 iron ears and washed them in the pond of pure yang before stabbing them back into his ear holes. When the power of Earthquake Cauldron exploded, I also knew it was bad and planned to hide in the world in the painting to escape unscathed. But never did I expect that the power of Earthquake Cauldron would simply be too terrifying. I didn't manage to escape in time, and the world in the painting was eradicated. At that moment, an unimaginable power suddenly came from God-broken mountain range to absorb the power of Earthquake Cauldron. Next, a huge hole formed in the heaven and earth, and on its other side was another world. Back then, they had been in a fierce battle, and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor hadn't cared about the consequences and frightened everyone out of their wits. Yet the huge change in God-broken mountain range had allowed everyone to escape unscathed. They didn't have time to check on the situation of the other world before entering into a fierce battle again. The abilities of Flower Sovereign and Star Sovereign Qiao were simply too strong. No one could match them, so Flower Sovereign went to attack Sun ship, planning to kill Yang Jingjing, and the situation grew grim. Granny Sai saw that it was bad and gathered everyone to lay down great overarching heavenly stars formation, executing it by force and pulling everyone's primordial spirit out of their bodies. She planned to launch a big battle with primordial spirits. Then, we entered a strange world. Death was slightly in a daze as he said, under God-broken mountain range, there was a strange world. It should be. King Kuan had more experience, so he explained, the inner world of a god's treasure. Death nodded. At that place, we were trapped and had to kill non-stop. In the end, we were killed, and after we died, we noticed a strange energy invading that world, then we saw a bird-headed god flying over. He led us to Fengdu, saying that we'll meet an old friend there. But just as we saw village chief, we got dragged back by Yu Mua. Village chief is in Fengdu. Qin Mu was astonished, then felt a pain in his heart. He gripped his fist tightly. Village chief, I will definitely save you from Fengdu. But what was truly astonishing was that there had been an unknown energy blocking the power of Earthquake Cauldron under God-broken mountain range. It had even pulled everyone's primordial spirits into it. What was that treasure exactly? Why was it buried there? Who was the one who had forged it, and who was it that had buried it? What the stone statues of the devil gods from the other world are searching for is probably that treasure. Also, the primordial spirits of Granny Sai and the others should still be in that treasure. Just as Qin Mu thought that, the ground suddenly trembled, and mountain rocks rumbled down in the distance as a stone statue swirled while breaking through the earth to rise up. The devil god from before had found them from underground. At the same time, tremors came from the darkness, and Qin Mu looked over there. In the fog were numerous stone statues walking in their direction. They found that treasure. Qin Mu's expression changed abruptly. Giant stone statues came close to the witch had come out from the ground, and all of them began to dig frantically. Their arms were throwing earth upwards like whirlwinds, and huge rocks were unearthed by them. Qin Mu and the rest on Sun Ship were astonished. The devil god stone statues dug the ground at an extremely fast speed, even if they didn't look too good. Soon, they dug out a huge pit and gradually sunk into the ground. But there were still mountain rocks that were thrown out of the pit continuously. These guys dig faster than dogs. Cripple muttered. King Kuan looked at Rat Immortal and asked, talking about digging holes, other than Tuxing Foam, Rat Immortal is the next person in terms of ability. Rat Immortal stood up and said, let me see what they are trying to do. After he said that, he shook his body and transformed into a huge grey rat. He leaped forward as though he was flying and ran down Sun Ship. In a few breaths' time, he reached the ground and tunneled into it, vanishing without a trace. Rat Immortal is skilled in finding treasures and is called Treasure Uncle Rat. He can travel underground without any obstruction, so he will definitely find something, King Kuan explained. Qin Mu raised his head and looked at luxurious flowers filling the sky above their heads. They bloomed as they shrouded Sun Ship. Meanwhile, Flower Sovereign stood in the center of one flower as if she had grown out from it. We need to dispose of the gods of high heavens. Qin Mu looked at Apothecary and the rest. Do you have any ideas? Apothecary smiled. We didn't have any ideas before, but now we have. King Kuan pulled out his golden horn and said, let me do it. After he said that, he rose from the pond and paid his respects to the golden horn. It was his sacred artifact which had been refined into a golden spear. After he paid his respects, the golden horn flew out with a whoosh, and piercing sounds could be heard as a golden line rushed through the air. It was the trace left behind by the artifact. The golden line pierced through the heart of Flower Sovereign's brows and came out from the back of her head. It then rushed toward another god and pierced him the same way. The golden horn changed its direction once more at an extremely fast speed. After a moment, all the gods, including Star Sovereign Yang, had been visited by it. A melodious whistling could be heard, and the golden horn landed back in King Kuan's hands. The golden line in the sky gradually dimmed and slowly vanished. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly as he looked at the golden horn. There was not even a drop of blood on it, even if it had killed numerous gods, like Flower Sovereign and Star Sovereign Qiao of the four sovereigns of high heavens. It was also undamaged. One had to know that the corporeal bodies of the gods of high heavens were incomparably strong, and even cult legacy treasures couldn't harm them in the slightest. Trying to attack their corporeal bodies by force was like smashing an egg against a rock and expecting it to shatter. But the sacred artifact of East Sea's Kuan people wasn't damaged in the slightest. This showed just how powerful was the treasure. However, even though the sacred artifact was strong, one had to also look at the person using it. When King Kuan had fought with the gods of high heavens earlier, the reason he couldn't win should have been because his abilities were not strong enough. King Kuan, the 3 bridges method to fix the divine bridge have already been made public to everyone by me, so why don't you come ashore and learn them? Qin Mu asked. Astonished, King Kuan said, so those methods to fix the divine bridge were spread by human emperor? I've already obtained the technique. Truth be told, our Kuan people often come ashore to do business with Eternal Peace Empire, exchanging what we have for what we have not. Qin Mu relaxed upon hearing those words. I see. Suddenly, a huge rat sprinted onto Sun's ship. Upon nearing them, it transformed into a grey-robed elder. He came to everyone's side and gasped for breath. There's indeed something underground. I saw empty space with a piece of temporary imperial residence, a god statue that's outrageously large, and a huge knife. Apothecary immediately brought him to soak in the pond of pure yarn before saying, your injuries have yet to heal, talk slowly. Rat Immortal took in a few more breaths. There's a passageway underground, and the stone statues have already dug until it. Heading down, there's the Earth's core, which is a piece of vast land. In the center of that space is a god statue that seems to have popped out from the underground. There are chains everywhere, and they are tethered to various palaces. I've no idea how that god statue had gotten itself into the chains, but they are even thicker than the chains pulling the sun behind Sun's ship. Astonished, everyone looked at each other. The chains that held the sun were made in founding emperor period. Such a divine artifact could no longer be forged. Yet the chains beneath God-broken mountain range were actually even thicker than them. Could it be then they were also remnants of founding emperor period? If the chains of Sun's ship are to tie down the sun, could the chains underground be meant to tie down that god statue? Death suddenly said. Everyone's heart trembled. Why would a god statue need to be chained down? This video will end here.